So this was the 2017 motorcycle trip of Dave Calligan, Bill Luce, Mike Welch, and John Batista. We averaged 340 miles per day for 7 days. We started in Texas with our bikes on trailers, drove to Dave's place in Colorado. The road was a little bit muddy, so we had to wash before we got started. So our first day's ride was 340 miles north. First stop was Garden of the Gods, and the second stop was the top of Pikes Peak. This is the typical scenic, hilly, and curvy roads in southern Colorado. We enjoyed these rides all the way up to Garden of the Gods and beyond. So as we rode on, we went by Bishop's Castle. We didn't stop, though. There were a lot of people there. And we continued riding in, the beautiful roads of southern Colorado. We stopped at Garden of the Gods for a photo shoot. We managed to lose John in the parking lot, so he missed out, but he found us later. Let's see, the climb up Pikes Peak was slow. We always had several cars ahead of us, and Mike was leading as well. As we went up, it rained and off and on a bit, mostly off. The corners were extremely tight, and they were slow because of the traffic. There were many occasions where we either came to a stop or almost came to a stop due to traffic. The shack on the left there is where they measure your brake temperatures on the way down to let you know that you need to do something different if they're getting too hot. When we finally made it above the tree lines, we thought we were getting there, but there was still a long ways to go. So we continued to go up and up. We finally made it to the top as we approached the parking lot. You can see there are a lot of cars there. That's kind of indicative of the traffic that we saw. And we worked our way along until we found a spot to park in. So here's a group shot. It's pretty cool up here, probably 35 degrees, 14,000 feet. Beautiful views from the summit. It's crystal skies you can see a long way. On day 2 we continued northward, 322 miles up into Wyoming. First thing we did was went up Mount Evans. This was first thing in the morning. Here we are stopping to pay the toll. For a corner coming up, I've got a shot with Bill's camera, and then that's this one being shown now, followed by Mike's camera. You can see the water on the curve. That's indicative of the same curve. And it was just a lot of fun riding up this one. We had plenty of speed. There wasn't too much traffic. With Bill and Dave out of sight, Mike let John by to take up the rear. Maybe get a little video of John. And when we got so far up, the permafrost was creating problems with the road, so from here on up the road was pretty rough. Here you can see the right edge of the road just drops off with no guardrail or anything, very steeply. So you can see Mike is riding on the left hand side almost like he's in UK. Stay away from that edge. If you look way far ahead, you can kind of see a flat and then a 45-degree fall off. That's really indicative of this entire trek right here. And finally, Mike and John make it to the top. You can see that Bill and Dave have already made it. After John parked, he managed to let his bike fall over, if you listen. So we got it picked up, and then we got this is Dave and Bill at the top, followed by Dave and Mike checking out a goat, or maybe the goat was checking them out. Some beautiful views from the top. Again, clear skies, you could see a long way. And then here's our group shot. It was below freezing up here, so we didn't take our helmets off, we didn't take our gloves off. And finally, on the way back down, we went a little faster. We did run into some traffic, but it was a really nice ride down. Once down, we came across this bus we called the marijuana bus. If you look in that rear window, there's a marijuana plant hanging out. There were some great roads in northern Colorado. This is just a typical example. Fantastic colors, fantastic scenery, good roads, a lot of fun. Once we got to Wyoming, it was a little bit boring, flat. You can see a storm on the horizon, and we could not miss that storm, so we got soaked. Unfortunately, this wasn't going to be our last time we got soaked. And we stopped in Gillette at Legends Lounge in order to wait the rain out a bit. And we finally made it to Wheatland, Wyoming. Here we are at the Commodore Bar, talking with the bar maid about life in a small town. So here's day 3, 317 miles, mostly north and then east. We turned once we got to Devil's Tower. So the ride started out, it was kind of misting a little bit, and before long it was a full-out downpour. We eventually stopped on the shoulder and added all of our rain gear. And while we were stopped, John dropped his bike for the second time. Fortunately, that was the last time he did that. And in this shot here, you can see Devil's Tower just off to the left of Dave ahead of me. And, there's a lot of water on the lens. Okay, there's Devil's Tower. It's pretty nice looking. It's just kind of standing out here in the middle of nowhere. Here's the gang. The bike is a filthy mess. Again. And here's Bill with the Devil's Tower in the background. And we finally made it to Sturgis. There wasn't much going on after the rally, so here's the t-shirt that I got, logo on the t-shirt. And Mike made a posting to Facebook saying we're at Knuckles Saloon. So day 3 started and ended in Sturgis. We went 244 miles, fantastic ride through the Black Hills with a stop at Mount Rushmore. So there was great scenery leaving Sturgis. In this particular shot, a considerate Harley rider let us pass without us having to go out into the other lane. And we always had to watch out for deer. Here you can see several running out in front of Dave. We're all stopping abruptly. Except John, who casually slows down. There were more good roads and scenery just before we reached Mount Rushmore. So here is the looking through the flag corridor, and here's the gang in front of Mount Rushmore. There were a bunch of these really turns that went like 540 degrees around in the Black Hills. Probably too many of these to really count. Maybe, I don't know, 10 to 15. And there were also a bunch of these little tunnels, narrow tunnels like one car could squeeze through. And it was really nice that they actually cut these little tunnels rather than just blowing the whole mountain off to make the road through it. And like I say, there was more than 10 of these that we had to go through. And twice the road split into two one-way roads, just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So you're like driving through the forest on a one-way road, and then they would rejoin after several miles. There was two of these, I believe. And this is another one of those long turns, 540, 720 degrees or whatever. And this particular one has a tunnel coming up at the end. Made it a little bit unique. And this was an odd situation. There was a BMW rider parked and off of his motorcycle in the middle of the tunnel. I think he wanted to get a picture of his bike. Dave had already gone past him. Bill pulls up, a little irritated. The guy finally rides off. And an occasional car would use your side of the road if you're a motorcyclist. Here there's a bunch of buffalo on the right there. There was really no fences, it was open range. So we stopped and took a couple photos here and there. Mike's crouched down so that we can see the buffalo over his head. And on Needles Highway, there were very few straights. It was just curve to curve to curve. So I've got some standard speed here. And then I'm going to show you some high speed just to show you that it just keeps turning and turning and turning. The vertical rock spires here are kind of the namesake of this road, Needles Highway. And here is the Needles Eye Tunnel. It's the only tunnel that I saw that had a name. But here we are passing through it. Again, you can see how narrow it is. So on our fifth day, we went southeastward and then southwestward, total of 342 miles, headed out towards the Badlands. So, by the way, the Badlands are way out in the middle of nowhere, and it took a while riding through terrain like this to get there. And after a long while, we finally started to see evidence of the Badlands. And so here we are riding through the park. The scenery was just really fantastic. It was on both sides of the road frequently. There would be plains of grass, and every now and then there would be a goat or two on the side of the road. But it's just beautiful walking, riding through this. There was a little bit of traffic, but not too much, so occasionally we had to pass. And there was an occasional long stretch, so here there are two RVs pulling vehicles, and so Mike's ahead of me here, Mike and Bill passing. You can see we stayed over in the passing lane for a long time, and even after we got past, there was really no hurry to get in. We stopped and took some pictures. Here's a panoramic view. And here's a shot of the gang with the Badlands in the background. Like I mentioned, we had to watch out for goats. Here's a couple on the side of the road. Dave and a goat having a moment. And then after the Badlands, we headed into Nebraska. Nebraska was flat and boring. Not like Wyoming, but flatter and more boring. And here we are at Wild's Bar and Grill in Chadron, Nebraska. So our sixth day, we went 385 miles, mostly southwest. We rode through 3 states, Nebraska, Wyoming, and then into Colorado. So we started in Nebraska, continued to be boring. We did run across this farm vehicle that was using up the entire road, and we basically had to get to the right white line on the right or die. He didn't even slow down. So we ended up spending the night in Kremling, Colorado. We had some frozen margaritas at Los Amigos along with our Mexican dinner. Our last day was 416 miles in Colorado, getting back to Dave's place. And Colorado always has great scenery and great roads. It's just an example. And we ran across this big long tunnel. I thought it was pretty cool, so I'm going to get you into it, speed you up, and then bring you back out. And continued to have great scenery, working our way down in through Colorado. We had one more pass to go through yet. That was Independence Pass. It happens to be a continental divide, so we stopped for a photo opportunity. So this is a picture of the gang. And then back on the road, we had our last gas stop, and looked like there were a bunch of storms out ahead. It looked like we might get wet again, but somehow we avoided it. We ended up having dinner at the Dog Bar and Grill in Chikara. We were less than an hour from Dave's place, so we got back on the road. Pretty close to Dave's place, we encountered another deer where we all had to stop. And once again, we all stopped abruptly. John casually stopped. So we finally arrived, and we cannot wait for our 2018 adventure. Hope you enjoyed it.